Hi, my name is Ami. Today, I sit in a quiet studio, staring into the lens of a camera, prepared to share my truth. It's not easy revisiting the shadows of the past, but I believe some stories must be told, not just for healing, but for the hope they might inspire in someone else. I used to work at a restaurant in the UK, not just any restaurant, but one that bustled day and night with customers, orders, and the chaotic rhythm of food service. I started as a junior kitchen assistant, just looking to make ends meet. I was far from home, learning the ropes of a foreign culture, trying to stay strong in a place where I knew no one. The owner of the restaurant was a man with an intimidating presence. At first, I thought he was just strict, someone who demanded perfection in his business. But soon, the lines between professionalism and cruelty blurred. Every day, he created new menu items: pasta with impossible spice ratios, rice dishes with bizarre presentation, eggs with unnecessary complexity. It wasn't innovation, it was torment, and I was always the one asked to execute his visions. I would pour my energy into preparing his dishes, and when I placed them on the serving table, he would scoff, insult me, and humiliate me in front of others. His words weren't just criticism, they were weapons, and they hurt. There were days I cried in the bathroom, hands still smelling of garlic and tomato paste, wiping away tears with the back of my flour-dusted hands. I told myself it would get better, but it didn't. The abuse escalated. He would throw dishes when he was angry. He once shattered a ceramic plate just inches from my face, and his words became darker, more personal. I started to dread waking up. I lost weight. I stopped talking to my coworkers. I was slowly fading into someone I didn't recognize. One evening, as I sat on the edge of my bed in a small, rented room, I stared at a bottle of rat poison we used at the restaurant. The thought had come to me like a whisper. What if I added just a drop to his food? Just one drop. He would stop. All the pain would end. But something inside me hesitated. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the little voice of my conscience reminding me of who I was. I put the thought aside, but the idea stayed with me, hiding in the corners of my mind. Just as I began plotting what I thought was a solution, everything changed. One morning, as I was preparing ingredients in the back kitchen, there was a loud crash. Police stormed into the restaurant. Everything happened so fast. Officers were yelling, people were pushed against walls, drawers were searched. I froze. Within minutes, the owner was handcuffed and dragged out. The police uncovered bags of illegal substances hidden in the dry goods storage. Turns out the man who tormented me wasn't just a cruel boss, he was a drug trafficker using the restaurant as a front. It was shocking, but also liberating. After the raid, the restaurant was closed for a few days. When we reopened, everything felt strange, quiet, empty. The man who once dictated every move was gone, and he didn't come back. Weeks turned into months. Rumors spread that he was in jail, awaiting trial. Some staff left, others stayed. I chose to stay. I needed the job, and the absence of his presence felt like fresh air. I started talking to my coworkers again. Slowly, I felt myself come back to life. But then something even stranger happened. One morning, the manager handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter and a few legal documents. My hands shook as I read the contents. The restaurant, the business, the assets, it had all been transferred to me. In his final act before the arrest, the owner had named me the new proprietor. I was stunned. Why me? The staff began addressing me as ma'am. They looked to me for decisions, for direction. I was terrified. I had never run a business, but I stepped up. I remembered everything I had learned. I treated the team with kindness. I introduced fair scheduling, better working conditions, and even implemented new menu items, ones that made sense. Within months, the restaurant started gaining popularity again. Customers noticed the difference. The environment was warmer, the food better, the staff happier, but I was still haunted by the past. Why had the man who made my life hell left everything to me? What was his motive? One cold evening, I received a call from the prison. The owner wanted to speak with me. I didn't know if I had the courage to go, but curiosity won. Sitting across from him, separated by a thick glass window, he looked different, tired, older, quieter. He said one thing that stuck with me. I was a monster, but you were the only light in that place. If you're watching this, struggling with your own silent battles, let me say this. Don't let the cruelty of others change who you are. Don't let despair consume you. Seek help. Speak up. You are more powerful than you believe. I thought I was powerless. I thought I had no choice. But life had a bigger plan. I leave you with this lesson: not every enemy is your end. Some are just the beginning of your strength. So hold on. Your time will come, just like mine did. Months after my story aired, I began receiving letters and emails from women around the world. They shared stories of pain, survival, and hope. I couldn't ignore the need. With the help of a few generous donors, I started a foundation that supports victims of workplace harassment and abuse. We offer legal support, mental health counseling, and training workshops. It's named after my mother, who taught me that even in silence, a woman's strength never dies. One rainy afternoon, a former coworker who had left during the worst times returned. Her name was Priya. We sat together in the restaurant sipping tea, and she smiled as she looked around. She said, "You turned a prison into a palace, Ami." It was one of the most validating moments of my life. We laughed, cried, and promised to support other women the way we wished someone had supported us. As the restaurant continued to thrive, I opened a second location. But this time, I did it with a team of women who had all been through some form of abuse or hardship. We called it Second Flame, a place for second chances, for rising again. Watching those women smile as they cooked and served reminded me daily that the fire meant to burn us can also be our light. I no longer wake up afraid. I now wake up with purpose. My days begin with gratitude and end with pride. There are still challenges, but I face them with strength. Sometimes I visit schools to speak about resilience. I share my story not for pity, but to ignite something in the hearts of those who listen. We are never as alone as we think, and we are never too broken to rebuild. So here I am again, in front of the camera, ending this chapter with the same words I began with. Hi, my name is Ami. This has been a story of struggle, of survival, of unexpected gifts. But most of all, it is a story of reclaiming power. I hope this story finds someone who needs it most. And I hope, if you're that person, you now know that your voice is powerful. Use it, speak, and keep walking forward. After the final confession, I didn't expect what came next. Thousands of messages flooded in, some from strangers who saw their pain in mine, others from women who had never dared to speak until now. I realized my story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to every silent voice that had been waiting for a reason to rise. I was invited to speak at conferences, to mentor young girls, to help draft workplace reform policies. What started as a scar has become my armor. What began as survival has become service. One morning, as I sorted through foundation mail, I found an old yellowed envelope with no return address. Inside was a letter from the former owner's sister. She thanked me. She said her brother had written to her from prison, telling her everything about his cruelty, his shame, and how he hoped I would forgive him by continuing the restaurant. He died shortly after that letter. I didn't know how to feel, but I lit a candle that night, not for him, but for the chapter that finally closed. And in that moment, I understood. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting the pain. It's about freeing yourself from it. Years later, I trained a young woman named Lena, who reminded me so much of myself: nervous, ambitious, and quietly strong. When I handed her the keys to the third restaurant we opened, I saw tears in her eyes. "You're giving me a life I never imagined," she said. And I replied, "I'm just giving you what someone never gave me." Watching her succeed became one of my proudest moments,